the early days of psychology, the ring had only two heavyweights. In one corner, you had Sigmund Freud, who saw humanity as a creature on a relentless hunt for pleasure, a story driven by the primal need to satisfy our desires and dodge pain. In the other corner stood Alfred Adler, who countered that the real story was a will to power, a constant grinding struggle to rise above our feelings of being small and assert our place in the world. For a long time, the script seemed written. We were either chasing satisfaction or seizing control. But a different kind of answer, a quieter and more resilient one, wasn't found in a comfortable office with a leather couch. It was discovered in the one place you'd least expect to find hope, a Nazi concentration camp. There, a psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl watched as the world he knew was incinerated. His family, his life's work, even his name, all of it was stripped away. In that abyss, where pleasure was a distant memory and power was a lethal joke, he saw something incredible. Some people, against all odds, found a reason to keep going. He realized there had to be a third force, a motivation that burned even when all other fuels were gone. A will to meaning. Frankl's idea, which he would later develop into a school of thought called logotherapy, is that our deepest drive isn't for pleasure or for power, but for purpose. He saw that this meaning wasn't some abstract concept you find by staring at the clouds. It could be forged in three distinct ways: through a creative act, like building something or completing a great deed; through a profound experience like the love we feel for another person; and most powerfully of all, in the stance we choose to take when faced with suffering we cannot escape. It's a stunning revelation. It suggests that even when a situation feels like a prison, we possess the last of the human freedoms, the power to choose our attitude, to decide our own way. This wisdom has never felt more relevant than in the last few years, as a global pandemic pulled the rug out from under us, leaving so many in a state of quiet isolation. Stripped of our normal routines and securities, many of us, without even knowing Frankl's name, began searching for that same will to meaning. We found it in small, defiant acts of purpose, a video call to a lonely grandparent, the decision to finally learn that instrument, the simple choice to connect with others rather than retreat into despair. It leaves us with a question that quietly dismantles that old, two-sided debate. What if the true measure of a life isn't the pleasure we collected or the power we held, but the meaning we were able to create? Let's imagine a scene straight out of a disaster movie. Two people are stranded, adrift in the aftermath of some great catastrophe. On paper, they are equals. Both are in good health, both have the same meager resources, both face the same brutal, overwhelming odds. Yet as the days bleed into weeks, a strange separation occurs. One of them begins to fade, succumbing to the sheer hopelessness of the situation. The other fights on, patching the raft, rationing the water, staring down the vast, empty horizon with a stubborn fire in their eyes. The person who survives isn't necessarily the one who is physically stronger or who knew more about survival. So what was the difference? This isn't just a thought experiment. A psychiatrist by the name of Viktor Frankl witnessed this exact dynamic play out in the most brutal human laboratory imaginable: the concentration camps of World War II. He noticed a terrifying dividing line between those who made it and those who didn't, and it had little to do with physical strength. The survivors, he saw, were the ones who clutched a powerful purpose, a deep and unshakable why for living. For one man, it was the face of a wife he desperately needed to see again. For another, it was a book that the world had to read, a symphony that was still unwritten inside their head. For Frankl himself, it was the manuscript that had been ripped from his hands, a life's work he was determined to rewrite. This purpose wasn't a gentle hope, it was the ultimate armor, the one thing that could give a person the will to endure almost anyhow. Our modern world, in contrast, often seems to hand us a catalog of cheap, pixelated purposes. The next promotion, the fancier car, the next hit of dopamine from a glowing screen. These things can feel like they matter, but they are often just beautiful distractions, flimsy shields against a deeper emptiness. They are not the kind of armor that can withstand a real storm. But we saw a flicker of that deeper truth re-emerge during the global crisis of 2020. As the world locked down in fear, many people, stripped of their usual routines, found a profound sense of meaning in the simplest acts. They weren't chasing a promotion, they were delivering groceries to an elderly neighbor, they were organizing support for their community. This wasn't a grand, heroic quest, but a genuine why that provided the strength to navigate the overwhelming how of the moment. It is the quiet, internal compass that keeps you pointed forward when the storm rages, and it leaves you with the one question that truly matters. When all the noise finally fades away, what is the why that remains? Think about a film like The Shawshank Redemption. You've got a man whose entire world is reduced to stone walls and a number stitched onto his shirt. Every move is choreographed by someone else, his very existence a line item in the prison's ledger, and you're forced to ask yourself, is he just a product of that cage? A piece of clay molded by the brutal hands of the system? Or is there something in there, a final spark, that no set of bars can ever truly extinguish? This is the very question that sits at the core of one of the most powerful insights to emerge from the darkest chapters of the 20th century. This brings us to the territory explored by one of the most resilient minds of his time. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist imprisoned in the Nazi concentration camps, realized something profound in the midst of absolute horror. His captors could seize his body, dictate his environment, but there was one piece of ground they could never occupy. As he would later write, the one thing that can't be taken from a person is the last of the human freedoms, the power to choose one's attitude in any given situation, to choose one's own way. This wasn't some lofty philosophical idea for him, it was a weapon for survival. Think about that for a second. Surrounded by the machinery of despair, Frankl chose not to be consumed by it. Instead, he would retreat into the one place no guard could follow, the sprawling, private landscape of his own mind. He'd hold entire, vivid conversations with his wife. He'd picture himself years in the future, standing on a stage, teaching the very psychological lessons he was being forced to learn in that moment. He was building a parallel reality, one where he was the architect. The outside world can write the script, it can build the set and cast the villains, but you, and only you, get to decide how your character responds. Now, it's easy to hear this and think it sounds a bit simplistic. A nice idea for a poster, maybe? But not for the real, crushing weight of reality. And that's a fair challenge. Some circumstances are so total, so suffocating, that the space for choice feels like it's been squeezed into non-existence. But what the stories of survivors like Frankl suggest is that even when that space is narrowed to a single pinprick of light in an ocean of darkness, that pinprick is everything. It is the choice to find a microscopic sliver of meaning. The choice to protect your own dignity. It is the final declaration that even if you can't control what happens to you, you will not let it control who you are. That is the final, unconquerable frontier. The one dominion that is always, and only, yours. You know that image we all have in our heads of the lone seeker, climbing a mountain to ask some wise guru for the meaning of life? We're sold this idea that the answer is out there somewhere, a secret password we just have to find. But what if that entire quest is a wild goose chase? What if the universe isn't a silent sphinx waiting to be solved? What if we've been asking the wrong question, or rather, asking it of the wrong entity? This is where the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl steps in with a radical flip of the script. He suggested that maybe, just maybe, it is not we who are meant to question life about its meaning, but life that is questioning us. Suddenly, meaning isn't a prize you win, or a treasure you unearth. It becomes a responsibility. It's not something you find, it's something you build, answer by answer, day by day. Think of someone like Ludwig van Beethoven. Here is a man whose entire soul, his very identity, is woven from sound and harmony. And then, in what has to be one of the cruelest plot twists in history, he begins to go deaf. He could have surrendered, and no one would have blamed him. But he didn't. He stared into that abyss of silence and chose to answer it, not with despair, but with creation. He composed his Ninth Symphony, some of the most profound music ever created, while trapped in a world without sound. He wasn't given meaning in his suffering. He forged it with his work, answering the brutal, personal question that life had hurled at him. But Frankl would be the first to tell you that you don't need to compose a world-changing symphony to answer life's call. Think of the person who volunteers, doing community service, or helping others who are struggling. In performing that act of service, by answering a concrete need out there in the world, they find an answer for themselves. Think of that moment you put your phone away and just get lost in something beautiful, a sunset, a piece of art, a conversation. In that moment of pure engagement, you're answering, and maybe the most powerful path is the one Frankl identified for when things fall apart completely. He argued that when all else is taken from you, one freedom remains, the freedom to choose your attitude. In that choice, in the dignity with which you face the unavoidable, you create a meaning so profound no one can ever take it away. So maybe the search for meaning isn't some grand cosmic scavenger hunt. Maybe we're more like sculptors. Every day, life hands us the raw block of stone, a new challenge, a new relationship, a new experience. It's up to us to pick up the chisel. The meaning isn't hidden inside the stone, waiting to be found. The meaning is what we choose to carve. Think about the last time you were giving a presentation, and the one thought consuming your mind was, don't let them see your hand shake. You focus all your energy, all your willpower, on commanding them to be still. And in that moment, as if summoned by some perverse magic, the trembling begins. It's a strange paradox hardwired into the human psyche. Our desperate attempt to control something is often the very thing that sabotages us. We become the director, actor, and harshest critic in a film about our own lives, constantly yelling "cut" to give ourselves notes on a performance that only gets worse with every take. What if the only way to win this game was to stop playing by its rules? This was the territory explored by the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who saw that this anxious loop wasn't a fortress to be sieged with force, but a tripwire to be sidestepped with cunning. He developed a kind of therapeutic judo he called paradoxical intention. He tells the story of a bookkeeper whose career was being destroyed by a crippling writer's cramp. The more he tried to force his letters to be neat and perfect, the more his hand, held hostage by his own will, would seize up. Frankl gave him a bizarre prescription: go home and try to write with the most hideous, chaotic, and illegible scrawl you can possibly imagine. And as the man sat down to intentionally create the mess he so deeply feared, he found he couldn't. His hand was steady. By inviting the monster in for tea, he discovered it was never a monster to begin with. But this is more than just a clever psychological trick for curing a nervous tic. It points to a deeper modern condition, a kind of self-obsession where our own feelings and anxieties become the entire show. We are constantly taking our own emotional temperature, endlessly analyzing our internal weather report for any sign of a storm. Frankl's other great insight, dereflection, is the art of finally turning the camera around. It suggests that our modern quest for a stable identity, for comfort, for happiness, has us looking in the wrong place. We're digging inside ourselves for something that can only be built outside. It's a shift of focus from your own performance to a project that needs doing, from your own inner turmoil to a person who needs listening to, from your comfort to a purpose that is fundamentally bigger than you are. It's the profound realization that the map out of your own labyrinth isn't found by frantically searching for an exit, but by looking up and finally engaging with the world beyond its walls. Think for a moment about the grand promise of modern life. It's a bit like a perfectly scripted video game, where the goal is to glide through a level with zero friction. We're sold this vision of existence where every inconvenience can be life hacked away. Every moment of discomfort can be optimized into oblivion. We're handed a map where every obstacle has a pre-approved detour. But what happens when the game breaks? When you're thrown into a reality that's fixed, unmovable, and has no cheat codes? A situation so deeply painful that you simply cannot change it. This is where the wisdom of a man like Viktor Frankl becomes less like philosophy and more like a survival guide. His central insight, forged in the most unimaginable of circumstances, is that when we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. It's not about pretending the pain isn't there. It's about a kind of psychological alchemy, transforming suffering into purpose. This isn't just a nice thought. Imagine someone whose entire universe has been reduced to the four corners of a bed, their world shrunk by quadriplegia. When this very principle was introduced to them, it didn't magically heal their body, but it dramatically lowered their anxiety, their fear, that crushing weight of helplessness. Or think of the soldier returning from the chaos of the battlefield, carrying ghosts on their shoulders. This same idea has been a lifeline for veterans with PTSD, allowing them not to erase their trauma, but to forge a new sense of meaning from it. It seems to unlock a fundamental human truth. Finding a purpose, a why, grants us the strength to endure almost any how. And in a world that can feel so chaotic and overwhelming, that might just be the most vital tool we possess.